Greetings everyone. Welcome back to Storytime Recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the film from 2018, Matriarch. Before we start, I hope your day be filled with sunshine and smile. Enjoy the story. Beginning of the movie, we see a pregnant woman named Rachel and her husband, Matt, traveling to an unknown location. Their journey looks to be peaceful and relaxing until they learn that the road ahead of them has been closed. Matt follows the traffic diversion signs, but he loses concentration and hits a fallen tree in the middle of the road, damaging their car and leaving them stranded far from the crowds. When Matt tries to call the tow truck, his cell phone receives no signal at all. Thankfully, Matt happened to discover a farm about a half-mile from where they are now. Choosing to continue in that direction, they pass a sign warning that the place is privately owned and they are not allowed to enter. Nevertheless, as they start to enter the farm area, they have to continue heading there. Suddenly, a man driving a car approaches them. Even after Matt explains what he and Rachel are going through, the man still criticizes them and orders them to leave his land. However, after learning that Rachel is heavily pregnant and that the child is a boy, he drastically changes and becomes extremely welcoming to them. This man, Bobby, tells his wife Agnes that they have a few visitors. At first, Agnes declines to accept them, but after learning that Rachel is pregnant and that the child is a boy, Agnes becomes excited and tells Bobby to bring them home. After Matt and Rachel clarify that they just want to borrow his cell phone and don't want to bother Bobby, he happily invites them to his home and informs them that the telephone line was damaged during the storm, and they are waiting for a technician to fix it. Matt and Rachel accept Bobby's invitation and are shown around his home. While traveling, Rachel notices a girl in a black dress staring at her. When they get to Bobby's house, Agnes and her two sons, Luke and David, greet them. Agnes asks her sons to gather their guest bags before showing them to her room, where they will spend the night. The guests are overjoyed and amazed that they will receive such a service, even though their only request was to borrow a cell phone. But they don't know that Agnes can hear them from outside the room. Later, Rachel is surprised to see the girl they saw earlier on their walk, but her husband doesn't see anyone there, so she tells Matt. After that, Matt and Rachel are invited to supper with Agnes and her family. During dinner, Rachel notices a picture of Agnes and Bobby with the girl she had previously seen, and she asks the girl's identity. Agnes claims that the girl is her youngest child, Faith, but Faith wasn't there for dinner that day. In fact, Agnes adopted Faith along with Luke and David because, in Agnes' opinion, God had a better plan for her and her family. They are then taken aback to witness Bobby suddenly become enraged with his son for whatever reason. After dinner, Matt and Rachel went back to their room. Rachel started to have doubts about Agnes's family because she hadn't seen Faith with them and because of their odd behavior. As a result, Rachel asked Matt to leave his house in the morning. However, they soon discovered that someone was listening in on their conversation from outside the room, even though Matt checked and nobody was there. After that, Matt realizes Rachel is exhausted, so he puts her to bed. The next morning, Rachel hears someone crying. When she turns to face Matt, she discovers that he has left, and Faith is crying over her dead parents. It turns out that Faith approached Rachel and started mentioning her name. However, it was only a dream. When Rachel wakes up, she reveals that the girl is actually Ellie Adams. Rachel tells Matt that Ellie Adams is the symbol for Faith. Ellie's family has been missing for months and has appeared in the media. She believes the Agnes family is involved in this, and that they are to blame for Ellie's parents' passing. She asks Matt to leave immediately since she can't stand to be there any longer, and they then proceed to descend the stairs carefully. But regrettably, the door to the house is locked. After Matt places the key in the key box, it accidentally falls to the ground, and Bobby then appears from behind. When Matt and Rachel are set to leave the house, and that they will continue their journey on foot, it turns out that Luke and David are already there, armed. Bobby, on the other hand, basically stands there and says nothing. After that, Rachel is struck by Bobby and David hits Matt, both of them collapsing. Following that, Rachel finds herself awake with her hands bound and asks, "Where is Matt?" Agnes replies, "He's in a much better place now." Meanwhile, Luke and David are preparing the burial site and remove all of Matt's clothing, including his underwear. Just as Luke is about to kill the unconscious Matt, David steps in, telling him to bury Matt alive. Then Luke says he might need Matt's cigarettes and lighter when he wakes up and throws them in his coffin. On the other hand, Rachel is using Agnes's assistance to give birth to her child. Soon after the baby is born, but it turns out that the child is a girl instead of a boy. So Agnes takes her outside, leaving Rachel exhausted. Rachel tries to untie her hands after seeing Agnes go, and when she succeeds, she picks up the hanging cross and acts like nothing is wrong when Agnes speaks. Rachel, who is now angry, then hits Agnes, but she is helpless once they are all there. Once more, Rachel is restrained by cable ties around her wrists and ankles. Agnes then confesses that she killed Faith's parents in the name of God, saying that she freed her adopted children from Satan's grasp and that Rachel and other parents were infected by evil culture. After being gagged, Rachel is then taken to a head shell. Agnes then pumps Rachel's breast milk forcibly, as Matt, who has woken up, tries to utilize his lighter as a source of light. He checks the loose side of the crate and finds dirt outside. It dawns on Matt that he has been buried alive in a coffin as he makes every effort to smash through the side of the crate to escape. Matt doesn't even know where he is right now, so he looks around to try and figure out where he is. After that, Matt wanders aimlessly in search of assistance, but is unable to locate anyone and doesn't even know where he is at the moment. Shortly after arriving at a waterfall and cleaning himself up, he finds a nearby cloth and uses it to cover his body. Eventually, he leaves the area without wearing any clothes. However, Rachel's attempts to break free from the chains are unsuccessful, and she eventually falls back asleep. At some point, someone arrives with food and drink for Rachel, who recognizes the person as Faith, formerly known as Ellie Adams. Rachel begs Ellie to assist her and locate a means of breaking free, but Ellie just turns around and leaves. The focus then changes to Matt, who is trying his hardest to locate the highway when he eventually spots two men who are camping. When they notice Matt's clothes, they assume he is intoxicated and experiencing hallucinations. Matt tries to ask them for help and tells them everything about what he and Rachel are going through, but ultimately he is left with no choice but to start fighting with them. Matt then grabs their clothing and offers a win-win arrangement. Matt offers them a knife to untie them and asks them to show him the route to the highway. In the meantime, Luke and David arrive to witness Agnes holding Rachel's baby room. They offer Agnes a solution knowing that she is genuinely wishing for a boy. If Luke and David have intercourse with Rachel, Rachel will give birth to a son, which is probably God's purpose for them. Agnes runs them out of the room because she can't believe what she just heard. Luke and David, who have never experienced anything like this before, finally decide to meet Rachel in the hay shed. When Matt is able to get back to the house, Ellie assists him in finding Rachel at the same time. Rachel is forced to comply with Luke and David's demands, but fortunately Matt shows they're just in time to beat them both to death with a pipe. Rachel is happy to see Matt is still alive after telling him their child was delivered and that it is a girl. After learning this, Matt is delighted and breaks Rachel's iron shackles with his pipe. However, when Agnes hears a knock from Matt's iron pipe, Bobby answers it right away. Ellie is clearly attempting to draw Agnes' attention by smashing the glass there. Later, when Rachel and Matt go to exit the hay shed, they discover Bobby has already left while brandishing his rifle. Matt covers Rachel right away and allows himself to be shot. After that, Bobby hits Rachel with his rifle, knocking her unconscious. Rachel is then restrained in the same spot once more. When Rachel regains consciousness, she observes Ellie trying to break free from the chains, realizing that Ellie has also been restrained. Back at home, Bobby witnesses Agnes applying makeup to Luke and David. Agnes believes that Luke and David are still alive, so Bobby tells her to let them go. Eventually, they are buried in the meadow with the 3 tomb crosses. After grieving for their loss, Bobby tells Agnes to return home, but Agnes, who still won't let go, insists that Bobby go home first. Meanwhile, Ellie and Rachel have finally managed to take apart the bricks that hold the chains, allowing them to release the chains around their hands and necks. Rachel then goes to Bobby and Agnes's house to retrieve her baby after discovering her room. Not long after seeing her infant, Rachel appears to be very joyful. Following Bobby's return home, Ellie and Rachel are forced to hide in the closet. Bobby checks on the baby and leaves the room, taking the breast pump with him. However, he discovers that Rachel has vanished from the hay shed, so he quickly takes his gun and heads back inside. But this time Rachel decided she would no longer hide and asked to be allowed to give breast milk to the child directly without pumping. Bobby granted her request, but when it became apparent that Rachel was only holding a cloth, Rachel fatally stabbed Bobby with a knife. Rachel then hurried to get Bobby's cell phone and called the police. Unfortunately, Agnes arrives home at the same moment as Rachel. Suspicious, she takes the rifle and waits for Rachel outside after realizing that the hay shed key is still in the lock. Shortly after she departs with the tractor to go somewhere, Rachel and Ellie cautiously emerge from the home with Bobby's rifle. They quickly go to the car, but can't find the keys. It turns out that Agnes is watching them from a distance. After a while, Agnes approaches Rachel and forces her to exit the car with her gun, leaving Ellie with her infant. From this point on, Rachel and Agnes will fight, although most of their shots miss. Absent after being shot in the arms and legs, Rachel battles Agnes to keep her from taking her baby. Eventually, Rachel wins by hitting Agnes' head on the ground. Rachel and Ellie then leave the house, and the police and ambulance arrive. The police try to find out what happened to them, but Agnes, who is still alive, hides behind the ambulance and tries to shoot Rachel. Luckily, the police notice Rachel's presence and quickly shoot Agnes to death. Before the movie concludes, a police officer asks about Ellie Adams, who Rachel had previously reported. At this point, Ellie had vanished from the scene. After some time, Rachel discovers that the girl she had earlier seen in the house was not the actual Ellie Adams. In fact, the only thing following her when she tried to flee the house was the shadow of the deceased Ellie. Rachel also found out that Ellie Adams was the owner of one of the 3 grave crosses from the earlier scenario. After that, an ambulance takes Rachel and her baby to a nearby hospital. Thanks for watching, and remember to turn on your notifications to watch more movie recaps like this one.